To order. I'm going to hand over the microphone to Commissioner Paul.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Council Residential Districting Commission's New American and Immigrant Communities meeting. My name is Dave Paul. With me today are my fellow commissioners, Jeff Cabot, Monica Sarazuela, Avery Frost, and Commission Chair Malik Moore. The Council Residential Districting Commission is a collective of residents formed to draw maps creating 9 residential districts in Columbus. In 2018, Columbus residents passed a charter amendment that added 2 seats to City Council and created 9 geographic council districts, with each seat elected at large. As a result, Council will expand to 9 members, seated beginning in January 2024. In accordance with our charter, the residential maps will be drawn by this group, a 5-member independent citizen-led commission. The commission must create and submit 3 districting plans to identify the boundaries for the 9 council districts. By the end of 2021, City Council must adopt one of the 3 proposed maps without making any changes to it, except as necessary to ensure compliance with the Charter. As part of our work, we've hosted 8 community meetings, including tonight's meeting, 2 educational meetings, 4 region-specific meetings, and 2 community-specific meetings to collect feedback from residents. In addition to that, we've been soliciting feedback through a survey to figure out what is important to residents and how they define community. That survey is open until this Friday at 11:59 p.m. If you've not already completed the survey, we encourage you to do so. Information about how to access the survey will be shared later in this meeting. We're excited to be here tonight to hear from you. We look forward to hearing the ways in which you describe your neighborhood. We look forward to becoming more familiar with area commissions and civic associations to which you belong. These questions and more are what we hope to answer here today, as well as receive general feedback on the 2021 districting process. We are doing this work ahead of drawing the first drafts of the maps that will define council districts, and to ensure that we know what matters most to you about your city, your community, and even more important, to understand why. A reminder that this meeting is currently live on Facebook, YouTube, and CTV, Columbus's Government Television Channel 3. We will have time today for all voices to be heard. We will solicit feedback from attendees who are joining us here in person, and we will hear from you later in the meeting. If you're viewing through Facebook or YouTube, please write your questions and thoughts in the comments section. We will address those as well. Whichever way you're joining us today, your comments and your voice are a part of our overall feedback, and your voice will be heard. During the first 2 meetings this year, we heard from local speakers about a few different topics relevant to our districting work. If you'd like to go back and watch any of these presentations, you can find the recordings and the slides from the presentations on the city's webpage for the Commission at www.columbus.gov/districting commission, one word. My fellow commissioners will now briefly highlight some key points from those presentations. First up, the Voting Rights Act. Avery.
Yes, so we heard a presentation on the Voting Rights Act presented by Kyle Strickland of the Kirwan Institute. And during that presentation, Kyle gave us a rundown of certain provisions in the Act, including how the Act requires that our city's districts are drawn fairly and that they consider the racial makeup and diversity of the proposed district, number 1. And number 2, gerrymandering, or also known as packing a district, is something to avoid in our work. We want our districts to be proportionate to the electorate that it'll serve.
Next up is Jeff Cabot.
Thank you, David. We also heard a presentation on area commissions and civic associations by David Huey. There are currently 21 area commissions recognized by the City of Columbus and supported by the Department of Neighborhoods. There are also hundreds of civic associations, block watch groups, and other organizations throughout the city. These organizations serve as catalysts to change, not only in their neighborhood, but at City Hall and beyond.
Next, Monica Sarazuela.
Thank you, Commissioner Paul. We heard a presentation around Columbus growth patterns presented by Kevin Wheeler and Mark Dravilis with the City of Columbus that talked about how redlining and the construction of the interstate system drastically altered some of our neighborhoods, specifically those with neighborhoods that house communities of color, the effects of which we can still see today in our city. And we know that Columbus has grown substantially and continues to be one of the fastest growing cities in the Midwest.
And next up, our chair, Malik Moore.
We heard a presentation from Doreen Uhau-Sauer about the Columbus community and our neighborhoods. During her presentation, she shared the history of our neighborhoods, the diversity of what they are today, and how they came to be the neighborhoods they are. She documented and shared with us the pathways and the history of how these neighborhoods have transformed over the years. Each part of our town has a unique history, and these histories have shaped the way we see the communities that exist today. And so we recognize as a commission how important it is to consider the differences and the similarities that exist between the neighborhoods in our community, and we're going to factor this in when we draw these districts.
Again, you can view these presentations in full on the CRDC webpage. Before we move into the main discussion this evening and hear from our guest speakers, we have a short presentation from my colleague Monica Sarazuela, who will talk about the residential districting survey that we're promoting in conjunction with our weekly meetings. Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Paul. Again, so want to just take a few moments to talk about the Council Residential Districting Commission survey, which has been out to the public for a few weeks. So in addition to the meetings that we've been hosting like tonight and out in the community, we designed a survey to solicit feedback from you, our residents, on what you think is important for the CRDC to consider when drafting these maps that we know will produce 9 residential districts for Columbus City Council. This is a historic moment for our city, and we cannot do it without hearing from the voices that matter most. And so this survey consists of general and specific questions around districting, as well as demographic information. And there's a couple ways to access this survey. You can visit the CRDC website at www.columbus.gov/districting commission, or you can go directly to the survey link at www.surveymonkey.com/r/Columbus districts. Your participation in this survey and this process will help to ensure that the final map is a reflection of the community's voice. Thank you. Again, and I know that we've been posting about this on social media, or Columbus City Council has, so really encourage everyone to take the survey and please share it with your network.
Thank you, Monica. We hope that everyone watching and here with us tonight will either have already filled out the survey or will do so before it closes. Again, the easiest way to access the survey is through the city's website at www.columbus.gov/districting commission, one word. To kick off our discussion this evening, we've invited a few community leaders from across the city that represent and serve some of our most vulnerable populations to speak and share with us their thoughts about districting, what is most important to their organization or organizations in some cases, and the people they serve, and anything else relevant to the work of this commission. We ask, if you would, to try to keep your comments to around 3 minutes. That would be very helpful just to keep our meeting moving. The first to speak tonight will be Nadia Kasvan with U.S. Together. Let me say, if I mispronounce someone's name, I'll apologize in advance. I'm hoping I got that right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. City Council members, Commission members, thank you for welcoming me today to address the proposed redistricting plan. Immigrants and refugees are a large and growing part of our city. And as a former refugee myself, I want to ensure that the voices of all new Americans are heard by our City Council. there are about 184 and 800,000 new Americans who call Columbus home. But the journey to get here is not always an easy one, as many of you here know. Many of us have sacrificed so much just to get another chance. And that is the true power of immigrants and refugee story, resiliency. No matter what the world has thrown at us, we've continued to strive for a better life regardless of obstacles. That resiliency is what has made the city of Columbus stronger economically as well as socially. Just in 2019, foreign-born residents contributed $15.4 billion to the metro area's GDP, which is 11.5% of the total. And we are only 8.7% of the population, contributing 11.5% of total GDP. So it's clear that the new Americans are doing more than their share to help build our city up to its greatest potential. However, our efforts can only go so far, which means that the city of Columbus, through this new redistricting plan, must meet its new residents halfway. The city must extend a hand, create a path, and clear off a seat for us at the table. In creating these 9 districts, the committee must be committed to inclusiveness and not just someone to speak on behalf of new Americans, but our voices directly. This means understanding where refugees and immigrants in our city live, making sure that Morse Road and Northland receive the same quality of representation that we see on High Street or the Short North. This also means being more attuned to the specific barriers that many new Americans face and ensuring that city resources are available in the many languages other than English that more than 200,000 Columbus residents speak at home. Further, as this pandemic has shown us, new Americans face unique barriers to healthcare access and public health measures. A future city council district that includes many new Americans must be afforded the proper, culturally appropriate resources to address these inequities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next on our list of speakers is, and again, apologies if I mispronounce, Shaun Rogers Dr. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking with us tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner, City Council. Good evening. My name is Shaun Rogers Dr, and I'm president of the Asian American Commerce Group, the largest Asian chamber in Columbus. Our members provide essential services to neighborhoods throughout Columbus. We applaud the effort of Columbus City Council to expand access to new Americans. I would like to share recent data provided by the New American Economy. According to their data, immigrants make up nearly 12% of the city of Columbus's population. You might find it surprising that Asian Indians are the largest immigrant group in Columbus, surpassing even Somalians and Mexicans. I didn't know that until I read this report. Followed by the Chinese community. In addition, Asian Indians and Chinese Americans are the fastest growing demographic in the city of Columbus. Unfortunately, and this is very important for us to know, only 49% of new Americans are naturalized citizens and thus can vote. Furthermore, voter turnout is much lower in new American communities and Asian American, as well as Asian American communities. These two factors result that new Americans and as well as the Asian American community have significant less political influence relative to their population and economic contributions to the city. New Americans, including Asian American communities, are fueling Columbus's growth and have transformed this city into one of the country's fastest and growing and most desirable cities. Thus, the Asian American Commerce Group encourage contributions by new Americans at the political level and the economic level and the civic level. We encourage the Commission to draw districts in which new Americans
comprise a significant constituency of each district to make sure, while they might not be the majority, that their issues are being addressed by their elected leaders and their voices are not silent. Thank you, and thank you for your time, and thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Next to speak is Alpha Tangor with Liberians in Ohio. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, commissioners, fellow community members, and community leaders. We say thank you. My name is Alpha Tangor. It's a privilege to be here today. I'm a business owner on the south side of Columbus, originally from West Africa, Liberia. I've lived in Columbus for over 15 years. I am the current executive director for the Liberians in Columbus Incorporated. Liberians in Columbus Incorporated is the de facto Liberian organization here in the city of Columbus, and it's been in existence since the early 80s. We are becoming one of Columbus' fastest growing new American communities since the Civil War in the late 80s to the early 2000s. There are approximately 10,000 Liberians residing here in the city of Columbus, predominantly on the north side and the east sides of Columbus. In 2015, a community research partner was retained by Franklin County Job and Family Services to conduct an assessment for all Liberians living within the Franklin County district. The results that we found were very, very astonishing. The result shows that Liberians in the county are younger than the general population. A larger number of youth, ages 16 through 17, are unemployed, and consequently, the high number of unemployment within the populations creates stress, isolation for individual families, and as well as financial and economic insufficiencies. As a result, a vast majority of Liberian households are earning below the federal poverty line. More than half of this population segment is without health insurance or lack of healthcare services. But our most significant challenges are access to education, jobs, mental health services, resources, and information. This is the motivating forces as community leaders for us to keep advocating for this new American community. Liberians in Columbus has desired to build a community center to address some of those needs. In 2018, we went door to door and collected $250 from each family household to purchase a plot of land on the east side of Columbus with the hopes of building a community center. On July 23rd at 10:30, we're going to be hosting our official land dedication service ceremony, and we're inviting all community members to participate in the process. The Council Residential Districting Commission should notate the needs of our new American communities, and combined, we can all find solutions to the problems. The process of transparency and engaging the community, especially this population, means a whole lot, and we appreciate the opportunity to stand here and express our voices. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, we'll hear from Ramona Reyes. Ramona is here representing the Lady of Guadalupe Center tonight. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Ramona Reyes. I'm with the Our Lady of Guadalupe Center, a program of Catholic Social Services. Thank you to Council and the Commissioners for allowing us to say a few words about the community we represent today. We pride ourselves in providing wraparound services for our Hispanic population, predominantly on the west side of the city. If you look at the demographic maps, that is a city that has an interconnectivity with poverty, low-income jobs. We have a median income of $5,000 per household. 32% of our children are considered in poverty in that side of our town. That's why we exist in that side of town. Things that are important to our community: jobs, safe neighborhoods, access to resources with culturally appropriate and bilingual assistance, access to education, access to fair immigration assistance, and fair and affordable housing. We feel these are the things that are economic and social determinants of health and prosperity for our community. We've shared a couple of statistics, but wanted to share a little bit more about the Latino community in particular. As of the last census, we make 5.71% of the population, which equates to about 75,000 individuals in Franklin County. Saying that, that's 10 years ago. We all know the growth of our community is severely underrepresented, undercounted. All you have to do is walk or drive through several areas of the city. We are no longer only found on the west side, even though we can calculate 32 or estimate 32% of the Latino community, which is not only all Mexican, even though we're predominantly 73% Mexican, is found anywhere from East Main Street and East Broad Street, Bryce Road and Refugee, the Whitehall, Reynoldsburg, and Pickerington area. Large populations in the Grove City, Southwest area, Cleveland and 161, Sullivan Avenue, and Georgesville Road. So it's very difficult to say we only live on one side of the community. All you have to do is go and drive down and see the emerging markets of our community, and you'll see the growth in the different areas around Franklin County. Some of the things that are important as far as the things that were highlighted by COVID from our organization: the lack of mental health and behavioral health services, a vulnerable population due to language, where scams for employment, Social Security scams, housing, and business scams exist, and it's difficult to find access from different representatives to go out and investigate these scams. We feel there is an increase of criminal activity within and towards our community. And then the cultural competency of social agencies, including our police. There are many activities going on within our organizations, within our community, and the lack of representation. Many times we bring up the issues and we get some Band-Aid resources and some Band-Aid responses, and don't necessarily, I'm assuming that's for me. Yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, by the way, for highlighting the geography also, because that's clearly a part of what we need to be very much aware of. So, thank you.
Paul, are we saving questions until the end?
Chair Moore, I'm going to leave that question to you.
Yes.
I'm going to allow you to go ahead and ask questions. As they come up, if we find them to be relevant, let's go ahead and.
Okay. Ramona, thank you for being here tonight. You know, with your center being on the west side and, you know, serving a Hispanic population, you know, I don't know when the last time we had a west side representative on council. 1, 2, we've never had a Latino city council member. Can you talk a little bit more about your interactions with working with local officials and, you know, trying to get the help that you need currently?
Thank you for that question. I find it very difficult. Our community finds it very difficult. I've been a resident of Columbus since 1987. What a lot of people also assume is that if you are a Latino immigrant, you're either undocumented, and therefore, you know, we heard maybe you don't have rights to vote, maybe you don't have representation, maybe you're not engaged in the political system, which is far from the truth. There's actually more people of Latino descent that are actually documented, whether it's a residency or citizenship. The lack of representation from our representatives, city council, government, we've seen some strides for acknowledgement from our political officials. We've seen some money being provided to some of our organizations, especially during our COVID with some of our CARES money. But when you're talking about assistance to increase immigration, non-refugee or asylum assistance, when you're looking at those agencies that have been funded that provide or should be providing medical, social, mental, behavioral health resources, it's very difficult to find which agency within our government that actually is in charge of providing or holding people accountable for those types of determinants. And then I think it's very difficult for the cultural competency piece. So what organization or what elected official actually understands the idioms of a community that comes from over 27 Latin American countries, where we're all bunched in together, even though we have a lot of different needs within those organizations. So I think that's a very difficult task, but finding somebody that actually can do the research, follow up, and be an advocate and make sure that the voices are heard of the Latino population would be greatly appreciated. As we grow, we've seen, and you've heard it over and over and over, a 250% growth in the Latino community. So the number that's coming up, if we all did a good job of promoting the census, is going to be very eye-opening for our community. Thank you.
Gracias.
Perhaps since we've established this protocol, I should ask if my colleagues had questions of our previous speakers. We could recall them now. I know that some of our speakers are planning to leave us before the end of the meeting. So were there any questions for previous speakers, or should we move forward in the list?
I have no questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next on the list is Burhan Ahmed. And Burhan is here representing the Somali community. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for Commissioner Chair, all of you. Appreciate it for inviting us to be here today. I just want to make sure, acknowledge folks here. Thank you for coming. Your best time coming and listen this conversation. As we talk about today, it was districting Council President, the District Commission, which is important for all of us. As you know, Somalia is the second largest city in this state. We pretty much located on east side, north side, west side. And as you see, Somalia's, as you see it, it's visible. I've been here 20 years. This city of Columbus is a home where my kids, I raised them, and they grow, all of them go on school here as well. So I want to thank you for allowing us today to talk about economic impact. As you see, Somalis are visible. They impacted economically. They buy houses. Also, we have a social determination that issue we face, housing issues, access to care, access to stability at home, lack of resource. That shows we are really dominated by the city itself, invisible. We don't have access to housing. We don't have access for care. So as you see, Somalia established small businesses and generated the city of Columbus largely, mainly dominated as businesses. They're showing up everywhere. We have the largest truck industry in this central Ohio. You see as population is growing, west side, north side, east side. Also, we have seen economic impact, CARE Act money didn't came our communities a lot of time. We haven't seen money coming our communities. A lot of them, they end up going different places and access. And that shows termination for the communities that are facing. A lot of business we lost. Many people, businesses created their own businesses, and a lot of them, they couldn't come back and get access. That shows because of a lot of our businesses created by people itself, by communities sharing wealth itself. It didn't come to the city, it didn't come to the state, it didn't come further. We might get little buckets there, but still we have a way long way to go. Another thing is that we're seeing a lot of access to education. Many of our underserved areas that we live in, mainly highly dominated by African American. A lot of them, we have the same similarity access that happened. Spanish, Somalis, African descent, all of them experience same level of access to education, housing. Another thing also we're seeing sidewalks, the area that many northeast side, I see them, it's big issues. People can get sidewalks to get a quarter bus. We need transit system that has the city is growing population. We need to create a system that access to jobs as well. And as you see it, many low-income neighborhoods don't have access to buses, which is really challenging as well. So I want to thank you for allowing us today to demonstrate it, Council Resisting Commission. We wanted to see immigrants represent itself, this city. because that's the whole cope of, I don't know where they come from. We need to have somebody who can level the district and city, the neighborhood they come from, can highlight it, some of the issue we have, so they can simulate it and they can lift up. We need to appreciate what city's doing. We're happy to appreciate it, initiative that general, we need appreciate what you guys doing, which is important for all of us to have that representation, because we need somebody who will be represent all of us to get where we need to go, because we need the city to be home, that everybody have a fair share shot on in the long term. I want to say again, I want to thank you for the CRCD, the city, for allowing us today to come and allow us to share our concerns. Again, thank you for all of you inviting me today. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. Next, we have Josue Vicente. He's here representing the Ohio Hispanic Coalition.
Thank you. Buenas tardes a todos. Good evening. Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Latino community that we serve. I work for the Ohio Hispanic Coalition. Actually been in the agency for 20 years now. Become the executive director. Basically working in every single position throughout my life here in this agency, and also first-generation immigrant. So I have experienced pretty much, the growth and the experiences of the city of Columbus, and then the growth of the Latino community as well in the city. In 2020, the Ohio Hispanic Coalition was able to serve very diverse communities, and I say very diverse communities because we serve multiple communities within the Latino community. Okay, from North America, we have Mexico. We have a lot of Mexicans coming into the United States directly to the city of Columbus too as well. Some of them also make a first stop, probably like larger cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, and they decided to move to Central Ohio because it is a nice city to have a family and have a nice education too as well. We have Central Americans. We have people that we served last year in 2020, Central Americans from Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, people from South America, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil. Even though Brazil speaks Portuguese, we also have a large numbers and presence and representation of Brazilians, which very often are misrepresented in the city and the needs of this community. They speak different language too as well. We have Chileans, Colombians, people from Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela that we have served in 2020. We also have seen a huge, large number of newcomers, new immigrants into the Central Ohio from Caribe, Cuba, República Dominicana, Puerto Rico, and also, Puerto Ricans being citizens, and they have pretty much, almost the same challenges that some other immigrants we have when we come to the United States, and we suffer a lack of speaking English. So access to services is extremely needed into the Latino community. I was searching internet and looking into how many zip codes the Latinos are represented or living in the city of Columbus, and it was amazing to me that we have 30 zip codes with Latino representation. And then we don't hear that very often when city officials, when public services are really talking about providing services to minorities, and it is time to somebody to address this. So you as a community have a great responsibility here to really draw on the lines of these districts to make sure that all these communities are representative when decisions are made. It is time for the city to make sure that we have immigrants, first-generation immigrants, are being elected or have the possibility to be elected, and don't be afraid of us, because once we move to the city, we want to be part of the city. We don't want to be taken aside. We don't want to be just let's have a meeting next to the new immigrants or to the immigrants into the country or to the city. We want to be part of the city. We want the same thing of any other citizen, any other resident of the city of Columbus. We want to see the growth. We want to see the city succeed. succeeds. We want to see the neighborhoods safe. And then please make sure, when you join your lines, make sure that we have a possibilities to have a elected official because it is time. The city of Reynoldsburg have for a long time and just basically recently elected a couple city council members from 2 different countries. And that's great, to have that representation. Other small cities also around Columbus have some representation too as well in city council, except the city of Columbus, which is the city that we always say that it's an inclusive city, but it seems like it is from one line crossing the railroad, and there is time to change that. And then you have that power in your hands right now. So we want to see that happen. Obviously, we want to see equality. We want to see the city and the city officials to have a priority of growth strategy and including the immigrants into us. I don't know if my 3 minutes passed already, but I probably. So I don't know if you have any questions to me?
Any
For me?
questions? No?
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you. And we appreciate the enthusiasm, and we understand it's hard to compress all this into 3 minutes. Thank you. Next on the list, I have Dr., I apologize for pronunciation, Dr. Seleshi Asva? Doctor, welcome. Thank you. And you're with the Ethiopian Tewahedo Social Services.
Exactly,
ETSS. Thank you.
exactly. Tawahedo means coming together as one, which we are here together. So thank you, commissioners, and good evening, everyone. And really, I appreciate for the commissioners really taking your time and accountability and hard work, to bring this districting to the city of Columbus. So really, this is a good work, and thank you, the council, the city council and Council Remy, really, and his staff, and my friend Sandra Lopez, which is really coordinating this event. This is great, and our county commissioners really for bringing our city to be a welcoming city. And congratulations for all of us at the growth of refugee immigrants here in Columbus, and they contributed to the growth of the city. I mean, if you see the growth of city Columbus in 1999, 2000, and all the above, the growth contribution that new Americans brought to this city is really great and excellent. So my name is Seleshi. I am the president and CEO for the Ethiopian Tewahedo Social Services. I started my team and myself from scratch to serve the new Americans, initially, to serve the Ethiopian community, but we expanded to all refugee immigrants now. We are serving more than 60 countries. We are everywhere. Even behind this building, we have a sites and north side, about 12 satellite sites and 3 community centers. What I would like to share with you, in 2016, we did a data analysis of our refugee clients, about 4,509 of clients that came through our doors. Of those 4,509 refugees, remember refugees, not immigrants, 53% of those refugees live in the Northland and Northeast side. I'll give you 53%. So you can imagine how this corridor is highly populated by refugees and also immigrants. 43% are on the west side, and 7% at the east side. We didn't find on the south side of Columbus or southeast of Columbus. It looks like dry in that area, which really highly recommend when we are districting to recommend that to have a fair distribution of refugee immigrants to the south side of Columbus also. Because, the more you have refugees, there is a kind of growth and movement and activity. So that's one recommendation that really I want. The second one is that it has been told that how refugees are represented, 15% or 10% of Columbus. But our representation, we are underrepresented in the city council or area commissions or neighborhood activities. Our problem in our refugee immigrant community is really community participation and engagement. We are trying the best to encourage our staff, our new Americans to be part of the community participation engagement. But really, we have difficulties. We need the cooperation of the city, the leadership, and the neighborhood areas, that our people has to be part of the area commissions, the neighborhood activities, so that their voice can be heard, and the integration process will be completed. But that's really the challenge that we have. I think if we can work towards that area, because the contribution of the new Americans, everybody knows that, it's palpable in the city of Columbus, and the leadership is very, very smart, because attracting and welcoming new Americans, and we can see the population growth that the new Americans are bringing together. And my friends, all this, as you know, are community leaders. I see a lot of them, that we really work hard to make sure that the new Americans to be part of our city. So those are the three recommendations: area distribution, participation in area commissions, and then representation in the city councils and others. Thank you so much.
Doctor, actually, could I ask you a question? Yes. And are we okay for him to be in the audience and answer? Will you be able to hear his answer? Yeah. Okay. If you wouldn't mind coming back. It should be a pretty quick question, and that is, and perhaps this is an open question also for other speakers to comment on. I'm not sure if this is true of the Ethiopian community. I know there are some other communities where part of the reluctance or even skepticism on the part of the community about becoming engaged in government, becoming engaged in voting, political process, and so forth, may have some roots in the way things have worked in their original home country. Mm-hmm. Is that true in the case of Ethiopian community here? And can you also perhaps address how we can improve that?
Yeah, I think across the refugee immigrant communities, the participation on the politics and others, there is really that hesitation continues to be, and we try to advocate that, educating, building the awareness, how their voice matters. We did, but yes, the Ethiopian community really, semi-hermetic kind of community, that they just live their own kind of things, they are not really vocal, but they are actively participate, especially during those presidential elections. But they don't understand what the local elections are so important. That's the problem that we have, because the federal elections or on the presidential elections, there is a lot of promotions and people are participating. But I don't think really they understand that how local leaders or local elections matters. We need to work really hard to educate and build that and mobilization the community. And the approach is really, how the community is structured and organized. Churches, like, for example, in the Ethiopian community play a significant role, because the majority of Ethiopians are Christians, as you know. So there are more than 11 churches here in Columbus alone for Ethiopians. So approaching the priestess and community leaders is really the best way to engage the community. And even in other refugee immigrant communities, that works. Religious and faith and community-based organizations are so important. So yeah, the reluctance, people work, they come back and sleep, and that's it. But the political life affects their economic life too. So we have to teach them. There's a long way to go around in that area.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks.
Yes, let me just ask if my colleagues have other questions for Dr. Slushy.
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, can we go ahead? Ms. Reyes had a comment.
Most certainly.
Please.
I just wanted to make sure that we addressed it from the Latino perspective. As we've seen it in the news, there's a lot of turmoil going on, especially today in Cuba. So we have some of the similar issues of where, some Latin American countries have seen the turmoil. There's a lot of education that has to be done. But I also want to share with the commissioners, when you look at voting, it's very difficult to look at the Latino voting cheat sheet, because not every Latino has a Latino surname. So when you're looking at, and I've worked in several campaigns, and so many of my other Latino colleagues, we get a list of who's voted in the last electoral election, and everyone's looking for the Ramirez's and the Gonzalez's and the Johnsons, when we have many Williams and Jones and so forth. So I want to make sure that it doesn't go without saying that the Latino community is engaged. It may not be tracked as other similar communities because we have been here since the 70s. We are not, we continue to have new immigrants coming in from Latin American countries, but we've been here since the 70s and we've been very active and vocal within our community, and we want to continue to have that opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes. Okay, next we have Asafu Suzuki, representing Asian American Community Services. Welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairperson Moore, Commissioners. Thank you for your invitation and the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Asafu Suzuki, and I am here today as a board member of Asian American Community Services, or AACS. AACS is a community-based nonprofit seeking to improve the well-being and quality of life of Asian Americans and Asian immigrant families in Ohio. Details about our organization can be found at www.aacsohio.org. Recent data and estimates place the Asian population in Columbus at about 53,000, or about 5 to 6% of the population. This closely tracks with the national average. Asians are the fastest growing minority group in the U.S. in recent years, and Columbus is no exception to this phenomenon. Yet, Asians remain underrepresented in positions of power, including in political office. We are also less experienced in civic engagement as a community. As a result, we are often misunderstood, misrepresented, or straight out ignored. Asians represent over 50 nationalities, dozens of languages, and a multitude of religious beliefs. Many Asians in the U.S. are immigrants or refugees, but many others have been Americans for generations. When Asians are treated as a monolith, it is often the most vulnerable among us whose needs are least well met and who suffer the greatest consequences. While Asians have been long touted as a racial minority group that has achieved great socioeconomic success, this harmful and misleading model minority myth masks reality and fails to address the true needs of many in our communities. Asian Americans have a higher poverty rate of 12.3% than that of non-Hispanic whites at 9.8%, and are the most economically divided racial or ethnic group. Further, over 34% of the U.S. Asian population reports limited English proficiency, with some communities having even higher levels, making language access a critical need for the full social and political participation of our community members. An example of a population harmed by the model minority myth is the Cambodian refugee and Cambodian American population. Most of the participants in AACS's Healthy Asian Youth After School Program, or HAY program, are American children of Cambodian refugee families living in the Hilltop area. These children have social, emotional, academic, and engagement needs that cannot always be met by their families due to a range of factors, including intergenerational post-traumatic stress disorder, single-parent households where the parent must work, and the destructive draws of gambling, substance use, and gangs in their community. To conclude, Asians are not a monolith. We are not all Chinese, Indian, Japanese, or Korean, although I am standing here as an East Asian immigrant woman. We are not all professionals with a college degree and middle-class life. I respectfully challenge this commission to look beyond the singular label of Asian during this districting process, and to also listen to the voices of Asians who don't perhaps look like me, East Asian, work in the kind of workplaces where we typically associate with Asian professionals, or live in middle-class neighborhoods. As the needs of our community members will vary depending on factors such as ethnicity, country of birth, socioeconomic status, English proficiency, and many other factors. I thank the council and this commission, and thank you so much, Sandra Lopez, for inviting me today for this opportunity, and I am happy to provide further information at your request. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? No. Okay. Thank you. My colleagues have pointed out to me that I skipped someone on our list. My apologies. Harrison Poku is with the Ghanaian community. Harrison, welcome. And again, apologies if I mispronounced your last name. Okay.
You don't have to worry about me passing 3 minutes.
Do you need time to adjust the camera? He's quite tall.
No, you're fine. All right, thank you, everybody. I'm truly humbled to be here to represent the Ghanaian community. Anybody could have came here and spoke. My name is Harrison Poku Yeboah. I've been here 20 years. And before I came here, there were Ghanaians that were already living here. And we are about more than 10,000 Ghanaians that live here. Since I learned how to speak English here, I've been able to encounter a lot of different Ghanaians who are doing amazing things and businesses. I'm truly excited to be here today, and I was told to speak on 4 different points as far as what is important to us in the community, things that you guys need to consider. And me personally, what I think is important to me is that we are recognized, valued, and respected. That is something that is personally that I wanted to see. And in my community, we want you guys to consider when it comes to safety, because a lot of us, because we may not have immigration papers, we are put in a lot of fear where people do try to harass us. So that is something that I want the council to consider, our safety, and also financial stability. That is something that we do travel far away to come here seeking for jobs. So when we do go and apply for jobs, it is a competition. So knowing that jobs know and HRs know about our challenges coming into this country. Another thing that I would like you guys to consider, and I know a lot of us talked about it on why we do not participate in community events, is because of the lack of information. We don't get the information. Facebook and Instagram is not enough. We would love the city to come to the community. Like Selassie said, we have churches, little small communities. So we would love to come to community events, but it's mostly because of the lack of information. And then lastly, what outcome I would like to see out of this is to see at least somebody represent us as a city leader in one of these wards. And my favorite quote is, "Alone we are weak," and just being here today and seeing all the different nationalities makes me know that Columbus, we have a great future. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to represent the Ghanaian community. I'm sure we have Nigerians, Sierra Leoneans, and many different people, so I'm humbled. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Is Claudia de Leon with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here? Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you all. Muchas gracias for having me here. Thank you, guys, for allowing me to be here. Sandra Lopez, I know she's gone for the day, but I really appreciate it. So I'm here in representation of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and also as a business owner, I own or co-own La Mega Media, which is the largest Hispanic media platform in the state of Ohio, with representation in Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Dayton, and Pittsburgh as well. As a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, our vision is to promote business and economic growth in the Hispanic community through partnerships, education, and advocacy. And I want to point out 2 of our mission points, one of them being organize Hispanic and Latin American entrepreneurs, executives, and success-oriented individuals to create, strengthen, and unify in Central Ohio. And the other one is to monitor legislation, policies, and programs that affect the Hispanic business community. Speaking specifically to the Columbus area, there are around 1,700 registered businesses in the Hispanic area. We serve through membership maybe around 238 of them. The majority of the industries that we serve are more in the trades, so a lot in construction, landscaping, cleaning, but there's also a high percentage of supermarket owners and in retail. What we have found is that, and this is sort of, again, speaking to what Ramona was saying and Josue was saying, the amount of people that are coming into the city. So I'd like to point out that there's really 3 different groups. You've got, your new Americans, which are, or your immigrant community coming in from the different various countries. You've got the migrants, which right now we're seeing a lot of people coming in specifically from the New Jersey area, from Florida, a little bit more from Chicago. So people that already are established and are coming in because they're hearing the great things about Columbus and the great opportunities for growth and business in Columbus. And then you've got the second and third generations. So those immigrants who had their children that came in that are now dreamers, or their children that were born here, that maybe have a little bit of trouble integrating. Some of the numbers in a recent report indicated that there's around 55,000 Latinos in Columbus, Ohio. One of the radio stations that we own is in Columbus, Ohio, and we average around 60,000 streamers a month in the Columbus, Ohio region. So somehow that number's got to be wrong, because there can't be less people that are registered and more people listening to us within the state. As you look at the city of Columbus and not considering the suburbs, the majority of the population is going to be in the west of Columbus and then the north of Columbus. There's obviously high pockets in the suburbs around, whether it's Hilliard or Whitehall or areas around Columbus, but if we want to look at the Columbus area, those are the two main areas. And entrepreneurs, it's easy for us to see just by the supermarkets, and I know Ramona pointed out to this as well, that's where you see the majority of the supermarkets that if those supermarkets did not exist, we would literally be in food deserts, right? And I think that one of the reasons that I brought up our mission with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is, as we look to integrate, I truly feel that the attitude from our business owners particularly is not so much what can you do for us, but what can we do for you? But the problem is, how do we know that you're there? And I think that is one of the greatest needs, is having that representation so that there is someone direct that they can be directed to and pointed at for anything from whether it's permits with the city when they're trying to construct. Right now, we've got at least 3 entrepreneurs that are looking at developing businesses on the east side of Columbus, because that's another high area of not only the Hispanic community, but we actually happen to serve a lot of other communities. We serve a lot of the Ethiopian community. We buy a lot from the Arabic community. We purchase also from the Asian community. So I think that for us to actually work together, and this is something that I bring up a lot with other chambers, is how can we better communicate so that our business owners and the communities that we serve can better work together, not only with the resources and the education, but just general communication. So I think that is one of the greatest needs. Our buying power in the state of Ohio hit just above $12 billion. That's just Hispanic buying power. And the types of employment that we have, really, it's a go-around. So even the businesses that we own that don't necessarily cater to our community, maybe you're talking about, Efrain, who owns all the vaqueros in Columbus, that doesn't necessarily cater to the Hispanic community, but employs the Hispanic community, which then go and purchase from our other businesses. He too needs access to resources. And a lot of this, and I just use him as one example, but there's a lot. There's people in construction, there's people in cleaning, there's even in tech services. So I think as we look at the demographics of the city of Columbus, some of the primary needs for the Hispanic community, particularly entrepreneurship, is access to the resources, but primarily education. We tie in a lot to the media, and that's how we're able to get the word out. But I think that for there to be a purposeful, strategy to get that information out would be very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next to speak is Tala Dabor. And welcome, Ms. Dabor. Tala is here speaking on behalf of the Council on American-Islamic Relations.
Thank you, Commissioners and City Council. Good evening. My name is Tala Dabor, and I am the Policy Director for the Ohio chapter of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, known as CARE Ohio. We are a civil rights and advocacy organization that defends and empowers Ohio Muslims. A large part of our organization's work is to facilitate increased political awareness and civic engagement among Columbus Muslim community members through educational programming and policy advocacy efforts. This is crucial as Muslims remain one of America's least civically engaged groups and one of the most discriminated against in institutional settings. The Columbus Muslim community is made up of tens of thousands of racially and culturally diverse groups and continues to grow exponentially. The community we serve largely includes immigrants, refugees, and new Americans from a wide array of socioeconomic, racial, and ethnic backgrounds. We work with the Columbus Muslim community through facilitating religious accommodations in employment, educational, and healthcare settings, as well as through the provision of legal services with regards to employment discrimination and immigration. Through our community work, we understand that policing is an important part of our clients' concerns. The Muslim community in Columbus is plagued by both under and over policing, where policing issues are not prioritized according to community needs. As a diverse community, not only do Muslims face issues with overly aggressive policing, but Muslims also experience under-policing and have trouble accessing law enforcement in their times of need. Public transportation infrastructure and affordable housing are also concerns of our community. Access to transportation and affordable housing heavily impacts educational and professional opportunities, as well as access to health care. With these important concerns mentioned, districting should allow for neighborhood-specific policing issues and transportation and housing infrastructure needs to be addressed directly by the respective district council member. The Commission should consider the unique cultural identity of each community and draw lines in a way that amplifies their voices rather than diluting them. Through this process, the Commission has the valuable opportunity of hearing from different community voices, like we are today, and understanding how they define their communities. Immigrant and minority communities have always been politically disenfranchised, and this is an important opportunity to help them directly reach their elected officials on City Council and thereby connecting them to the resources they need to improve their communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Maria Cortez with the YMCA Welcoming Center. Ms. Cortez, welcome. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioners. Glad to be here. I echo a lot of what already has been said about our communities here, but I also want to say as a daughter of immigrants, and I know firsthand the barriers that immigrants face without proper resources. Language access, accessibility to transportation, proper representation in government, safe neighborhoods, and a quality education are just some of those factors that do not allow our families to be fully equipped with the tools needed to succeed. We also know that trauma is a deep root affecting our families, and without having proper culturally sensitive mental health services, that is a long struggle that we will continue to face. For a long time, the Latinx community has been an underprivileged and underserved population. Having a voice that looks like us and sounds like us would move the needle in proper advocacy for our neighborhoods, and in that way to increase also civic engagement responsibilities. I just want to also, for the last step, call attention to a research that shows that an increase in absolute number of immigrants in a county results in corresponding economic gains. That means that immigrants revitalize less desirable neighborhoods in costly areas, opening up new alternatives for middle and working class Americans to buy homes. And immigration supports the housing market without exacerbating the nation's worst affordability problems that we already have, because immigrants themselves do not tend to settle in the most expensive places. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. And I believe that concludes our list of the speakers we've arranged to speak tonight. Let me just check with our facilitator to make sure that there have been no additions that we're not aware of. It doesn't seem so. Okay. So let me ask at this point, first of all, did commissioners have any questions for any of our speakers that we might not have had a chance to pose to them? I'm not seeing any. At this point, we would perhaps like to move into Q&A with our guests and others in the audience. And let me go ahead and turn the mic over to Chair Moore to kind of get us started, if that's okay.
All right. So we're here today to hear the voice of the community. We heard from several organizations and several leaders, but we heard those leaders say that there is a very diverse community that exists all throughout Columbus. So we want to make sure that the microphone is open for individuals who may have something to share or questions to ask. Because we're on television, We're going to ask that if you do speak, that you come up to the mic and limit your question or your comment to 3 minutes. Okay? Dr. Seleshi, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I was expecting the Bhutanese Nepali community. Could you join us? Thank you. I was expecting that the Bhutanese Nepali community here, maybe they were invited, but I see some of our community leaders like Kashi and others, if they can say a few words, if you allow them, I think that would be great.
The microphone is open. So any individual has the ability to come up and speak at this time.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Kashi.
Hello. Thank you, commissioners and city council member, if there are any here, and the community members around Columbus. And it is our great honor to be here today, because this is a great opportunity for all of our peoples and community members to share our opinions, experiences, and feeling. By the way, my name is Kansi Adhikari, a former refugee from the Kingdom of Bhutan, evicted on the early 1990s, and lived in the refugee camp for 20 years, and came finally to the United States of America 2008. Since then, we have been testing America, and things are going great. So far, so good. We have been trying to know our communities, because this is a very complex country as a whole, brothers and sisters. Therefore, whatever the experience we used to have back home, we don't find that taste here. But still the country is great, and it has a huge cultural heritage of bringing immigrants and refugees since the time immemorial, and we are all here together today, right? And I have to share this bitter experience of mine that I had gone through in Columbus. On the Morse Road Walmart, one day I was shopping. A friend of mine suddenly uttered a word, says, "Terrorist, go back to your country." He said, "Oh, okay." Then I thought myself, okay, I don't know, this brother maybe misunderstood me. I'm not a terrorist, because I put my cultural dress, I put my tika as a Hindu, because this is a country with open society, and our rights, liberties, and independence had been, already constrained in Constitution of the United States of America. And I thought, okay, now this country, this community is needing a change. And I made up my mind to run for public office, telling the communities that I am not a terrorist, and this is my country, United States of America. And on 2020 primary election, I ran for the House of Representatives for Ohio General Assembly. And I lost the election by winning it, My opponent got 7,000 votes, and I just got around 3,000 votes. But still I consider that I won the election. That was my great taste in America. And since that time, because my scripture says that, Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phalesu kadachana ma karma phalahe thruvu mate sangasta karmani. Do your work, continue doing very productive work, and one day a community is going to recognize your work, and people will know around your community that you are doing a good job. That was the only notion that I was having in my mentality. I continuously embarked on the way of, organizing communities and connecting families and telling them where to go for employment opportunities, where to go for COVID vaccinations, where to go for COVID testing resources, and things like that. By the way, thank you, Dr. Seleshi, for introducing us here to this mass today. And sometimes what happened is we tell one thing and do other thing. That's what I experienced. And many of the previous speakers have already raised their concern that during the time of vote, election, leaders are coming, and I don't know, the city, state, all local officials are very active in terms of where are these communities? Do we need them really? Yes, because their vote matters, okay? But now, this is a great forum. So when you continue doing this kind of work, certainly you will hear a lot of stories, a lot of experiences our people have been experiencing in this country. There are a lot of resources in these communities, but not being ourselves able to diversify them, not having maybe we have the plan on the paper, right? We have been trying to implement our plan, but that is not exactly making differences in the lives of the people who are really needing that. Therefore, this sorts of forum has to go. We have, just to let you know, we have 2 Hindu temples in Columbus, one on Westerville Road, another on the Refugee Road. And upton time, we used to have this kind of interaction program with the city council members. And we have an introductory program in the temple already. And it is not many people, because of lack of information, they cannot go to the city. They don't know where the court is. They don't know where the municipal office is. They don't know where the mayor office is. They don't know where the city council is. Therefore, there are a lot of resources. Community is already well equipped with all these things. But they are looking for the way to communicate with them. How can community help the city council, the city commission, to redistribute the available resources?
Please forgive us for the limitations of time.
Exactly.
We have limited time. But
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Out of respect for all the other
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yes, yes.
We must move on. But
Exactly,
thank you.
exactly. Thank you for these great opportunities. You know, we are also a part of this, a vibrant community. Yes, please don't forget us, and we are always with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Please
Thank you.
introduce yourself.
My name is Farinda Tonga. I'm here with my husband, and I'm a mom of Ava Tonga. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to gather the masses to express what's going on in the community. I'm grateful for Columbus, Ohio. And since Ava been here, his life has really improved because Ohio, Columbus specifically, is for the masses. Here in Columbus, people move like really fast. People's life improve very fast. It's because of you who are members of Columbus, because of your ability to invite people from outside. So that's why the community is growing. So there's a very good forum, and I hope that you continue, and not just to continue, but to listen to all the presentations that were made here tonight. And I thank you.
Mrs. Tonga, Alpha shared earlier that there's going to be a dedication to a plot of land on the east side. Can you share the date that is again, please?
It's July 23rd at 10:30 a.m.
Okay.
On 4250 Kimberly Parkway.
Thank you so much.
So the mic is open, I believe, yes?
The mic continues to be open,
Please.
yes.
If you would introduce yourself. Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Munir Abdullahi. I am the youth director of Mass Youth Columbus. It's a national organization, got 50 chapters. So I'm from the Columbus chapter. We've been doing a lot of work with the Muslim youth community in central Columbus. Now we have a new chapter a little bit further west, but the biggest issue that I've seen is, like Mr. Poku said, a lot of the community members and a lot of the young leaders want to attend these events. They want to be part of these things, but I should try to take this off. But the information is not there. They don't know where to go. For the longest, I didn't know, when events were happening, where they were. I had Mr. Burhan, who is a liaison for the community, who would tell me these things, but he's the only one that I know in the Somali community who has this information. So if that information was a little bit more widely spread, maybe to the community centers, the largest community centers, there's about, I think, just 4 or 5 here. So it's not a lot, but they're very condensed, and they're very populated, and they have events every week, every month. So if this information of these events and these meetings would get to these centers, I think you'd get a lot more participation from the Somali community. You're definitely right, there is hesitation, but again, that's because of lack of information, a lack of confidence that they would actually be heard. So I think kind of dispelling those ideas and those preconceived notions in the older community would help, especially if you got to them in their centers, speaking their language. There are people here who want to do that work. So if you were to work with us a little bit more in that aspect, I think you'll get a lot more participation. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Munira, quick question.
Yes.
We heard it earlier stated that Facebook and Instagram isn't enough.
Right.
Would you say the same exists for these young folks you're talking about?
Yes, I think Facebook and Instagram, the problem with these platforms is that people are kind of in their own worlds, like in their own little universes. So only people who are very politically aware and politically engaged, there's not a lot of those people might see it, but the rest of the regular people who are maybe socially active in their communities might not see those things because they're more worried about what's happening directly in front of them and kind of, so that kind of news doesn't reach them on Facebook and Instagram, but they will reach them at their community centers.
And can you share the names of the community centers or?
Yes, we have the Mass Youth Center, which is near Northland. There's also the Noor Islamic Cultural Center, which is in Dublin. We have the Mrs. Imitamia, which is a pretty good community center that a lot of Somalis frequent. And then we have a new one that's being built soon, which is called the Muslim Youth Community Center, MCYC, and that is being built in Sunbury Road, and that'll be a very centralized community center once it's built. But those are the largest ones right now. And then there's also one on the west side called Abu Bakr Mosque. So that's the
Thank
gist
you
of them.
so much.
No problem.
And if I could just share with my colleagues, one of the things that we talked about in a previous meeting was where would we be able to set up the maps for folks to view them in, on a poster board or whatever. Where could folks go to actually review them, especially folks who may not be online or want to look at them online? And I wonder if we could ask staff, city council staff, to capture that idea and look at these locations as potentially locations to put maps.
Building on that thought, as others are in the audience and have centers that might be great places to house these maps, please come up and share the name and the address of the location where you might want us to. And so I think Mr. Poku is next, and then Josue, I think you can go ahead up and yell that out, and we'll document that. Mr. Poku, is that why you came up, sir?
I had a question.
Yes, please, please.
So I'm glad that the word immigrant and new American can represent all of us as a word. And one thing that I got out of here is a lot of numbers were thrown as far as the number of people we have. And so my question to the council is, do you guys have a plan to, I guess, satisfy all of us, or is it basically on who has the higher number receives all the information? Because we do have some communities who may not be high in numbers, but they're doing great things. They have nurses, students, they're graduating. So is it a numbers game, or is it a specifically who's or what community is really contributing to the community?
Our charge is to create 3 maps, each of them comprised of 9 districts that are fairly evenly balanced in population. What we're gaining from these listening sessions is an understanding of the nuance of each of the communities, to understand how we could come through a community and accidentally do damage by creating a barrier or a boundary where there is a cohesive connectedness between people. And what we need from you all, because you asked if we have the power, this is America, we are a democracy, and we want to remind everybody that the people have the power. And so the presence of these maps within our communities allows us to then lift up that voice and that power to reflect what it is as a community that you're demanding. One of the things I've tried to make overtly clear about this process is the work that we're charged with is not going to result in a perfect product. What it's going to do is gauge the level of intent and engagement of our city as a whole, and we as a group of 5 stewards will have moved work from point 0 to point 2, but ultimately we have to get to destination 10. And so what we need is more people to understand that it is their civic responsibility to serve, to take this not yet perfect product that is beginning to become a representative government and take it to its next version and its next state. And that's where we need community members. And that's where, as I heard today, we are going to witness the new American community step up, become civically engaged, echo the voice of what they're doing to make America a place that many other people can call home, whether I be Ghanaian and I want to make room for my Liberian brother, or I be a Mexican that wants to make room for my Nicaraguan friend. It's not about identity politics. It's about people who have experienced an uphill battle, leveling the playing field for others that they know are coming right behind them. Okay? Yes, sir.
And we're doing is laying the groundwork. We're
That's it.
laying the foundation for that structure. We're
At
not
best,
building the
at
structure.
best, we are laying the groundwork at best.
Thank you.
But as a community, you all get to set that path. Kalza?
Yeah, just a quick question. Somebody's giving me a question. Hi, everybody. My name is Kausar Musa, and I'm Somali community organizer. I'm from Somalia. I grew up Somalia. I did my high school in Ethiopia. I did my my bachelor in Sudan, my master's in Kenya, and I'm here. So I speak a couple of languages, and I feel like I'm representing all those countries that give me the support, you know. So the question I have today is, since the idea, the commissioners are here today to collect the information that the community have. We always see people are coming to us and, you know, they collecting the information. So is there a way, like, this question is from somebody, it's not from me. They said, is there a way they can, you know, follow up with the commission and they can learn from the outcome of this, of today's discussion? That's the first question. And second question is, yes, there is expectations that there is the commission is planning to have more seats, 2 more seats. So is there a way that 2 seats can be elected for somebody who can be representing the immigrants? I don't care who they are. They can be Somali, they can be Ethiopian, they can be Nepali, but somebody who has at least a sign, so, you know, like other people can say, we have a role model, somebody who is an immigrant is over there, so I can be, you know, one day like them. So the children can see him and, you know, can understand as a role model. So that's
Two
it.
great questions.
Thank
Is there a
you.
commissioner that wants to take it? If not,
I'd like to
please
respond, if I could, to the second part of the question, and that is just to say again, we as a commission are not able, we are acting on the will of the people as it was expressed through a change in our city charter. And it defines our work very carefully, very closely. It says that we are to create these maps, and part of the reason for that, at least I believe, obviously the voters don't need to explain their reasoning every time, but part of the reason for that is to help to enable what you've described to take place, or to facilitate it, to encourage it. But we as a commission really can't make any direct change in the makeup of our council. The voters have already done that. They've said there will be 9 seats. And have said that the seats or the locations from which each of those council members come must be distributed throughout the city in these districts. Beyond that, we can't really legislate from our seats how that council is composed, but hopefully it will provide greater opportunity for local representation, and that will include people who come from much more diverse backgrounds, perhaps. Is that fair?
that's very fair.
Thank you.
And I'll take
Commissioner
a stab
Frost?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at the first part of the question. So as far as follow-up with these discussions and the community meetings, so after this, I believe we're going to go into a working session where we'll start drawing map drafts in September, right? I think.
The first time we create our first version?
For public,
Yes,
yeah.
yep.
So in September, we're going to be bringing our drafts to the community. And so that's why we were asking for locations where we can come and present these. So you can see what is the result of what we've heard through all of this, but also make comment. If you're like, there is no way that that line should go down this street.
Right.
We need to hear that because we wouldn't know, right? So those, I think we'll have, there'll be a 30-day review period for the first draft. We'll take the notes, we'll go back and make some more drafts, and then they'll come back again to the public. And there'll be another 30-day review period where we'll hear your comments on what we've changed. Then I guess we'll take our notes, and then we'll present 3 final maps to City Council, and they choose one of those maps. And so there will be opportunity along the way that will come back to you, for sure, to make sure that we hear your perspective on what we come up with.
And so think about what the impact of that is. There's 9 districts. Now, moving forward in future elections, to be elected, you would be required to live in one of those districts. So if collectively, the things that are valued in this community, right, are what we've heard tonight, then I would imagine that the person that is designated, elected, and selected to be a leader of this district will be serving the needs and the demands of that community, or those communities, because I've heard the north side, the west side, and the east side as potential areas that there's strong voices being lifted.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Josue.
Well, thank you. Two things. The first one, we love to have these maps showing in our office, in our central office, located on 1535 Bethel Road, Columbus, Ohio, 43220. The second part is a question. I know you have a great amount of responsibility of drawing these lines about the districts that are going to happen in the city of Columbus. What is the three key points that you are taking in consideration to drawing those lines in the city of Columbus to make sure that the representation of the majority of the residents of the city will have an equal opportunity to run for office and represent us represent the community residents of the city of Columbus?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there a commissioner that would like to answer this?
I don't know that I could effectively remember all 3 points. I'm sorry. We'll have them with us when we do this. Don't worry.
So what we can't do is we can't break a community or use numbers. We can't stack or pack a community. We can't gerrymander, right? And so we have to respect where there's natural borders among communities. And then finally, the nine districts we propose, they can't be more than 1% in numeric difference, one from the other. And these are things that are spelled out directly and formally in the charter for this work. Honestly, I don't even believe, and we have legal counsel in a room, that ethnic background is something that we can use to influence a border. It can't necessarily influence a border, but we can recognize the history or possibly the culture of that community, but we can't let ethnicity be a deciding factor in where we put a line. Thank you.
Thank you, Jer. My question to you, all of you, is we talk about gerrymandering is one crucial thing that the voting rights is happening across the board. My question is how people know GIS when they updated those geographically 9 areas, when time people can go back and review those online.
If I heard you correctly, Burhan, you said about the GIS data?
Yeah.
So what we learned just yesterday is that the new GIS data that will reflect beyond the 2010 census with the most current census is coming out September 30th. So,
Possibly a little before, but.
yeah, so at the soonest, we'll have the data uploaded into the software we're using. And then once we've proposed 9 districts in 3 different maps, those maps can then be shared publicly via link. And folks can review those maps for comment. And so right now, as we ask folks for places we might want to distribute these maps, we want them to be widely distributed so that the full community has had a chance to comment. But that data, if that was the meat of your question, that data will be available to us on the 30th. As soon as the census releases it, ESRI will then update the software we're using to have those numbers. But leading up until then, we're going to use 2010 data to begin to create a version of maps and then see what that delta is when we get the new data. Does it still apply? You know, do our maps meet the requirements now, now that the numbers have changed? Thank you. Yep. Yes.
So that data is going to be very old. But my question is, I know that there's several community members here, but we also have contacts of area businesses and other locations where we know that our community frequents probably more than some of our community centers due to COVID. Right now, there's still community centers that are limiting access to the inside of the building. Will these maps be available for us to distribute to other businesses, community centers, schools, et cetera, within the neighborhoods that we know our community resides? I don't know how expensive or how big these maps are, but just wanted to know.
Certainly a logical question, reasonable question. We've recorded it, and we will then go to the city as we're building our maps and ask. But that's insightful. We may not have thought about that. I was asked about a month ago, what did I know? And I said, one thing I do know now is that what I thought would be a border, 71 or 70, would not be a respectful way to divide up a community, considering the impact of highways on dividing African-American communities and the history of that impact throughout America, right? And so one thing I did not know until you just said it is that these retail outlets might be more effective places for maps. And that's the value of us being here and listening, is because there's a lot we don't know. Yes, yes, yes. Yep. I definitely heard churches, yes. And so again, as you keep feeding information and we have it, we have no excuse other than we find out that we have a limited number of maps and we have to put them where the largest number of people can be, and it might have to be that they have to be ADA compliant, the access to the maps. So we'll find out those things and do our best to convey what we learn however we can.
One thing you ruled out, I'm sorry, let me come back.
I'll just make a quick note.
Yeah.
You know, if we can be of service, I do own the largest Hispanic media company, and we will distribute it for you. We distribute print publications, social media, on air, and if we can get that out, we will get it out as well.
Great segue to my comment. Thank you for that. I was going to say, several of our speakers have mentioned that there are, in some cases, a lack of media, of print media, perhaps in particular newspaper outlets and so forth, that communicate directly with their neighbors of a particular background. I don't think that's necessarily true of the Hispanic community. I think we have a pretty strong media presence in Columbus. But that's one thing certainly that I think the city could do, and I think will do, and with little cost, is share the maps in electronic form, certainly, with newspapers to reproduce them, hopefully not necessarily on page one, but somewhere. The other comment that I want to make is to echo what you've said. We learned early on, it was one of the questions we had, that the distribution of this information is not by any means limited just to government facilities or offices, and not just City Hall, or even facilities like the library, although that naturally came to mind. But we understand it can be put in private businesses if they're willing to host it, churches and so forth. Again, the work we're doing is not strictly speaking political. That's something important for us to keep in mind. In fact, we're prohibited from being political, with quotes around it, or favoring any political party. But obviously it does have to do with the quality of our political landscape, about encouraging voting, facilitating voting, and that benefits all sides of the political spectrum if we can bring more voters to the polls and also enable candidates to work better within the system. So again, we don't have any prohibitions on where these maps can be presented that I'm aware of, and I'm sure staff will let me know if I'm wrong.
School buildings.
Buildings?
Yes, school buildings. Thank you for wearing that other hat.
I just want to comment that I maybe am speaking for all the commissioners, that we are committed to making sure that these maps are put in non-traditional places. We want to be very intentional to make sure that the public is aware, and to ensure that, all communities feel that they're a part of this process, because at the end of the day, this is about the people. And if they don't have their input, then all of this is for nothing. So
that's potentially the most frustrating part, is if we do this work and nobody is really paying attention. That would be the worst possible outcome.
Claudia, did you say 63,000 streamers?
63 to 65,000, it varies on the month.
Yep.
Gone up to 80,000, so
Yep.
it's a pretty good amount. We distribute 15,000 copies of a print publication. We can do the centerfold, which will make more sense.
Yes, yes.
Not
Excellent.
the front or the back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the other thing I would want to say before we take our next comment, if there is one, is that each person in this room has a circle of influence. And if each of you commits to taking what you learn, or any links that you have, or even the opportunity to complete the survey that we've made available at the CRDC website, these are all things that amplify your voice and lift up the voice of your community, okay?
Chair, what I'd like to request is the third grade simple English version of what we're doing. Because if you've heard everybody, there's still people in this room that are confused. I understand because I'm involved in the political system. But how do we explain this to our community when we're using democracy and gerrymandering and et cetera, et cetera? I mean, we have to first explain to our community that we currently have 7 members at council. So technically, we're adding 2 seats, technically, right? What we're saying is there's going to be regional representative, maybe relate it back to kind of like how state representative, but hopefully not the districts that run down and crooked and look like a, like Gumby. But I think it's so important when we're communicating to, especially the new immigrant community that is just getting engaged, just learning, and we're truly, truly wanting to have our community feedback, because I do not have the ability to explain to 75,000 Latinos the process. So as simple, I mean, I always tell people, go back to what we did with the census. There was very clear 10 steps. What is it? How's it going to affect me? How's it going to impact me? And what do I need to do? The same thing we went with COVID. What is it? How's it going to affect me? What do I need to do? And how can I be safe? I think we need to break this down in the same way, because I heard the responses and I wanted to say, could we use simple English? Because it's very broad and how you're, and not trying to be unfair to you because you're being put on the spot, but if that could be very helpful. 4 or 5 key points on this is what this is how it's going to impact it, this is what we need from you, and I think that would be helpful for at least my community.
I envision an infographic.
Pictures are wonderful, the pictures are pretty much the same in all the languages.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think her point kind of triggered a question for me. The simple process. So it's 7 seats right now, right? We're adding 2 more. And I heard that you have to live in that district. So what happened to the current council members?
We half of city council, and again, we have legal counsel in the room that can correct me if I'm wrong. There's going to be 2 classes, like a Class A and a Class B. We reset. Class A will get, I forget the length of the term, 2 years? 4. Class A gets 4-year term. No?
You're making it too complicated.
Thank you.
In 2023, we will elect 9 members of council.
Boom. There you
Okay?
go.
9 members.
The incumbents, potentially, the incumbents can be included in that.
Basically, all of the seats will be up for grabs.
Okay.
In 2023.
Okay.
Starting with the primary in 2023. You have to live in your district to be eligible to compete in the primary.
Okay.
There is a time limit that you have to have lived in 1 year in that district to be eligible to be seated in that district. It is important to note that you have to be in the district to be seated for the district, but everybody votes on the districts. Just to be clear.
That's very
So
important.
everybody in the city votes for every one of the 9 districts. It's a
Right.
citywide vote. There's no wards.
But you have to live there. Exactly.
It's just a residency
So in terms
requirement.
of what it means to you, not much.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry. No, thank you. That was brilliant.
We'll keep it simple.
So I feel that, was that a request? Okay. I feel that we've allowed an opportunity for everyone that needed to speak. I feel that we've had a lot of voices heard. And I hope you all understand that the door is open and that this is democracy in action. So if there are no further comments from the commissioners, if there are no further comments from the audience.
I do have some
Yes,
closing-
please.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Yes.
First of all, we as a commission want to thank you for your engagement in the discussion tonight and over the last several weeks as we've been meeting and gathering your comments and your thoughts. This is the final meeting of this commission dedicated strictly to community conversations. And now it's time for us to begin our work actually developing the maps. You can follow our map drawing journey weekly as we host working sessions, still on what we're terming CRDC Wednesdays, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. for the remainder of this month and the month of August. We hope to have our first set of maps ready to be unveiled on September 1st. Again, as we've talked about, those will be based mostly on older census data, so we'll still have some work to do, but we should have something to show you, at least to be able to share with you our thought process by September 1st. Again, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you will continue to stay engaged in this historic process, truly. We've completed the community discussion portion. We are going to have a working session tonight as well. No, we're not?
I did not see that on the...
Okay, it's in my comments that I'm asked to make. So we're not going to have a working session tonight. I think we've got a lot to think about as it is, and we appreciate that. Importantly, please take the survey. Again, this is a tool that will help us a great deal, inform our discussion, inform our decision-making as we go through the process. The survey closes this Friday at 11:59 p.m. You can find the survey link and more information about this commission's work on the CRDC website. Once again, that is www.columbus.gov/districting commission, all one word. If you have any questions, either for the committee or commission or about the commission, please email crdc@columbus.gov. And we'd like to thank you again. And Chair, thank you as well for your time. And
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Paul. Thank you all who have participated. And with your continued support and presence, we're going to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Here, here.